remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat The Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash, A Little Rain Never Hurt Anybody, Parrish.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week, we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, or want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. That's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Lovecraft Country, Game of Thrones, True Detective, and Watchmen. Find all that information and past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. Finally, to hang out with us live all week long, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatpod.com/Twitch, where we play video games, host watch parties, and edit this podcast live. All that being said, Big D, what movie are you reviewing tonight?
Gene, tonight we will be reviewing a film for one of our glorious benefactors, Hot Sauce Steve, and he wanted us to review a movie for those who seek to find a way to leave their world behind, and he's asked us to review the 1995 family fantasy adventure, Jumanji. And just like last week, Steve has decided to send us a voicemail with his thoughts. So we'll get to hear what Steve thought of this movie in his own words.
Hello, it's Hot Sauce Steve. I felt like calling in for Jumanji instead of emailing. So when I commissioned this last year, yeah, it's been a while, probably a year. There was a lack of Robin Williams movies, and I wanted another Robin Williams movie in your catalog. So I put a poll on Twitter and Discord, and Jumanji won. I don't really remember it. I know I watched it a couple times as a kid. I remember bits and pieces of the movie, but no idea if it's going to be good or hold up. Hopefully you guys like it better than my commission up book, but we'll see. Anyways, enjoy the movie and the review, and I'll call in again for Full Metal Jacket, which is next week. Bye.
So Steve said there was a shortage of Robin Williams. I was shocked. Going back and looking, can either of you name the Robin Williams films we've done?
Good Will Hunting.
Hook.
Hook.
And that's it.
Huh.
That
Commission
is it.
Popeye, y'all. Commission Popeye.
No.
I
Dead Poet
can't
Society.
believe Steve. So Steve right now has like 66% of all the Robin Williams commissions. So thank you, Steve.
Well, Jumanji is a 1995 family fantasy adventure loosely based on Chris Van Allsburg's picture book of the same name and the first installment of the Jumanji franchise. It stars Robin Williams, Bonnie Hunt, Kirsten Dunst, Jonathan Hyde, and David Alan Grier. The story centers on a supernatural board game that releases jungle-based hazards upon its players with every turn they take. The film was released on December 15th, 1995 to mixed reviews, but was a box office success, grossing $263 million worldwide on a budget of approximately $65 million. It was the 10th highest grossing film of 1995 and spawned an animated TV series which aired from 1996 to 1999. Jumanji was followed by a related film, Zathura, A Space Adventure in 2005, and two indirect sequels, Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle in 2017, and Jumanji, The Next Level in 2019, with Columbia Pictures taking over distribution for all subsequent films. So Big D, Ash, we always ask where you were and what your memories are of the movie we're covering. Tonight, it's Jumanji. Ash, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I saw this movie when I was a kid with my family, but I'll be honest, I didn't remember much about the original. So my brother, I remember, was a little freaked out. I know my dad was super bored. He fell asleep in it. And that Christmas, I would get the board game version of this film without asking for it. It was just a gift that was given. And it was the lamest fucking board game of all time. then fast forward to me having my own children, and I've seen the remakes, and it was very hard for me to watch this without thinking about the remakes, because the first of the two remakes is such a good movie. It's really, really fun. My children love it. And so when my son heard Finn, when he heard I was going to watch another Jumanji movie, he's like, yeah. And then we started watching and he kept going, oh, is this the movie? Like, is this a cartoon or are these real people? Because he was so confused by the bad special effects. So I don't know. It was a strange experience rewatching this one.
So as the pod member whose womb is barren, I've been on many episodes saying that 1994 was the year that movies changed for me, right? 1994, I saw Pulp Fiction, The Crow, The Usual Suspects, Interview with the Vampire. It completely marked a change in my taste in movies, and I never really went back to kids' movies after that. And not having kids, I've never had a reason to watch Jumanji, because to me, from the posters, from the ads, from the trailers, it just seems so cheery and like so Disney to ever watch. And what surprised me on this watch, Steve, is how unexpectedly dark it was. And I'll talk about that on this episode.
So I do not remember the first time I watched Jumanji, but I think like most people, I'm a Robin Williams fan. I think some of his films are up there. I think for me, Fisher King is probably top 10. Steve was wonderful enough. He won, I think he won every one of our fantasy leagues. He won the Shat Fantasy Football League. I finished second. Shockingly, I had a rally at the end of the season. And as a gift, he tried to make me feel better about my shitty team by gifting me his commission. So I've been going back and forth. Every week, I think I know what it's going to be, but I'm leaning maybe towards the Fisher King. But as far as this movie, I don't know when I saw it first. And Ash, like you, I watched the last two remakes with The Rock and Kevin Hart versions with Emma and Vanessa. We love them both. So going back and watching this, I was a little bit surprised. And this is going to sound sacrilegious, and I might get strucken down by the gods. And if Robin is up there looking at us, I found The Rock and Kevin slightly funnier and their movies more enjoyable than this one.
Agreed.
Well, with that, let's roll the dice and hit the trailer.
There's a game called Jumanji that has a life all its own.
You have no idea what you are getting yourself into.
An ancient game where the primitive spirit of the jungle can leap out and take hold of your world.
I've seen things you can't even imagine. Things you can't even see.
And those who have ever played the game know the dangers that lie within.
You're afraid. It's okay to be afraid.
I am not afraid of anything.
Prove it.
Presents Robin Williams. Jumanji. It's a jungle in there.
In 1969, Alan Parrish escapes a group of bullies and retreats to his dad Sam's shoe factory. He meets his friend Carl, who reveals his new shoe prototype. Alan misplaces the shoe, which damages a conveyor belt, but Carl takes responsibility and loses his job. After the bullies attack Alan and steal his bicycle, Alan follows the sound of drum beats to a construction site where he finds a board game called Jumanji. That night, Alan plans to run away, but his friend Sarah Whittle returns his bicycle. Alan shows her Jumanji and invites her to play. After Alan inadvertently rolls a 5, a message tells him to wait in a jungle until someone rolls a 5 or 8, and he is sucked into the game. A swarm of bats appears and chases Sarah out of the mansion. So this movie opens up actually in 1869 and then fast forwards to 1969. And I got to say, Jumanji has some serious balls trying to whitewash 1969. They could have picked any year, but they went with one of the most tumultuous years in modern American history. You got the Tet Offensive, you got the moon landing, you got Woodstock, civil rights marches. But in Brantford, New Hampshire, everything's peachy. You got Carl, David Allen Greer. He's over here playing out cheerful black stereotypes. He's cool with all the white people. The white people in the factory refer to him as Soul Man.
Yeah.
And he's okay with that. And then when he goes to show his new invention to Alan, I'm like, please, God, do not be like a Reebok pump or like a Nike Air Jordan. Oh, no, it was modern basketball shoe because he's black. You get it?
Oh, it gets even worse. So he's like, Alan, my man, what's up? I kept expecting him to be like, hey, slap me some skin, John Turkey. But he doesn't. But listen, he's got this invention. He's taken Nike. He's beaten them by ever how many, 20 years? Who the hell makes one sneaker? Where's the other sneaker, Carl? Where's the other sneaker? But as the movie goes, Gene, you hinted, it starts in 1869. And we get to see these two kids. They're burying the game, and they're down there and they're worried. And they're like, "Oh, what happens if somebody finds this, Jebediah? I don't know. God forbid." How about anybody in this game think about somebody else in the military? When you got a shit in the field, okay, you don't surface lay the mine. You got to bury it. You bury it to protect somebody else from stumbling upon it. No one in this movie thinks about, let's pour concrete. Let's blow it up. Let's burn it. Or even better, Gene, we learned this with Lady Hawk, leave a detailed note. Do not play this game. It will not end well. Then the drum beats do nothing for these kids it's luring.
Yeah, I have to say, I think that part of the problem here, Big D, is your regular complaint that you have for movies, which is that the lore is just not strong enough. The rules don't make enough sense, because I get it to some degree. Like, if this game is like slightly sentient, which you're led to believe it is because it calls people in, it's kind of like a virus in that way, that the drums are beating, that you wouldn't be able to just destroy it super easily. So maybe you can't bury it in cement. Maybe you can't blow it up, but I don't know, you could like spray paint on top of it, right? Like, you could leave a note. You could write something like, hey, don't open this or shit might get weird. Or if I get sucked in, roll a fucking 5. Like something like that to make people not just give up, and then you get sucked into the jungle for 26 years.
Or fucking hold on to it to make sure nobody else gets it. Like, you must have discovered it somewhere, so you're got to think that somebody else will too. But having seen what Jumanji does when you play it, I personally would be terrified to fuck with the game. Like, I want to keep the game happy. I'm going to put it in my house, put some pads underneath it, maybe, serve it a baby every now and then.
Serve it a baby? That's your solution?
I don't know the lore, Ash. I don't know the lore.
Sure, maybe that was the problem. Maybe they didn't sacrifice enough babies to the game.
But I mean, isn't it Edgar Allan Poe, The Telltale Heart? Maybe it's the beating of that would drive you nuts as a kid. At what age does it stop? But I think you're right, Gene. Keep it in your control. Do something simple, but you should respect other people that are gonna suffer the same fate as you.
I appreciate the Poe reference, but the heart was beating, and not because you felt so guilty. Like, maybe Sarah should have a beating heart like the entirety of the time that she's at home, because she's left Alan alone. Because guys, I get it. Like, bats can be kind of scary if you don't like them. But Sarah, apparently, we're supposed to believe, is chased out and then like never comes back in. It makes zero sense. Like, you kind of go out into the street and you wait a second and then you go back in. Or you go out into the street and you say, hey, bats just chased me and Alan got sucked into the game, and then show them the game. Like, it can't be that hard to get them on their side. Like, roll some dice, get them to roll the dice, and then it'll help Alan get home when he's still a kid. And then the entire movie would be pointless.
Yeah.
And the movie makes this half-hearted attempt to address this issue. Like, Sarah, as an adult, she says that she tried to tell people, but nobody listened to her when she was a kid. But I guarantee Alan's parents would. Like, maybe the cops won't, maybe other people in town won't, but these are parents who they've established drove themselves poor and into the grave searching for their son their whole lives. They would certainly try any crazy ass thing to find him, including, yeah, sure, we'll play the board game to see if it works. And Ash, you're right. As soon as they roll the dice, shit's going to happen. They're going to know Alan's in there.
Yeah, totally. Maybe they roll a 5 or an 8. hey, woo, Alan's back. The movie's over.
Right,
Everybody's happy.
right, that's what I'm saying.
But you're right, Gene. Sadly, I gotta take a hard right here on this. I've witnessed what happens when a parent loses a kid. When I first moved to Orlando, there was a girl who lived nearby us. Her name was Jennifer Kessie. She was 24. She didn't show up to work. This was like 2006. And her parents, for a year, stood on the corner of John Young Parkway and Conroy with a sign saying, "Where is our daughter?" She was missing. They never found her, much like Alan. And to this day, it's a mystery. But I witnessed what parents will do for a chance to find their missing children. Now, I know that's a downer, but Alan's parents would have done anything.
I mean, you two are parents. Like, I can't speak to it, but I mean, I've lost a dog, and I did not stop until, he was found. I imagine you guys, if God forbid, if one of your kids went missing, and then some kid came by and said, "Hey, try playing this game. It could get your kid back." You might give it a shot.
Right. I'm going to at least roll
Definitely.
the dice.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of hard turns, I want to talk about these kids. Like, I try my best not to insult people's looks on this podcast, but that's adults. I think kids are fair game because all of us, I don't think there's a single person in the world who looked good their entire life. Maybe you, Big D, but no normal mortal, right? We all had awkward phases.
Yeah.
And thankfully, most of us weren't involved in blockbuster movies filmed with our disgusting child faces, like immortalized for millions. But Adam Hann-Byrd, who played young Alan Parrish, and Laura Bell Bundy, who played young Sarah, these are two of the ugliest children I've ever seen in my life. And I couldn't stop looking at their awful faces and immediately disliking them. And then getting to know them in the movie, I found out they're also just not very nice kids. Like, I found it hard to root for either of them.
You see, but Gene, I think I have the cause of this. If you notice Bonnie Hunt, she's got like a nose butt. Like the ball of her nose almost has like a butt crack in the middle of it. So they were like, God, we have to cast a young actor who will have that butt crack. So they found Laura Bell Bundy, who has, it is a pronounced nose butt crack. But doing research to see, hey, what did Laura Bell Bundy come up with? What did she turn into today? I was shocked, but also expecting my results. She is smoking hot.
She's a huge
with
Broadway
a
star.
nose job. She has had a nose job that clearly somebody told her, get rid of that nose butt.
We've got different definitions of smoking hot because I looked her up to see what she was up to. And the newest news I could find is that she caught COVID. And I found it in the India Times, and she was not looking great.
Well, maybe I should do some more research like I did about wolves and hawks. I gotta go take a look.
That nose job has not held up.
No, but she tried. At least, it's not as good as Jennifer Grey's. Jennifer Grey's is fantastic.
26 years later, Judy and Peter Shepherd move into the now vacant Parrish mansion with their aunt Nora after their parents died in a ski accident. Discovering Jumanji in the attic, Judy and Peter begin playing it. Their roles summon giant mosquitoes and swarms of monkeys. The game rules state that everything will be restored when the game ends, so they continue playing. Peter next rolls a 5, which releases a lion and a grown-up Alan. Alan meets Carl, who is now working as a police officer. The three go to the now deserted shoe factory, where they learn Sam abandoned the business to search for his son after his disappearance, until his and his wife's deaths in 1991. Eventually, the factory closed, sending Brantford into economic decline.
So, Steve, as a member of the Shat team, and we review these movies, I take my role and my responsibilities seriously. So I watched this movie twice. The first time I watched it alone, like I normally did. And then I said, you know what? Emma and Vanessa liked the two modern ones. Let's go back. Let's watch it together. So upon my second viewing, I realized how slow the plot develops, how much time they waste. It takes 30 minutes to get from 1869, Alan's introduction, the Parrish family history, the shoe factory, Carl's sneaker prototype, the 1969 start of the game. Then it jumps to 96. It is slow. And I got to ask you, what's the point? What does Alan's wealthy background, his upbringing, how does it pay off? It to me, it doesn't. I just wanted to get into the game. I could feel myself losing Emma and Vanessa every second it kept going on and on and on. What's the point of the backstory?
I'm just trying to figure out why you would ever watch this movie twice.
Yeah, what were you hoping to gain from that second viewing?
A deeper understanding. I don't know. I thought I would get to share this experience with my family, and it didn't get there. And I love Steve.
So you were like, this movie's slow as fuck. Let me make my family watch it.
I thought maybe I was wrong because the first time I was drinking heavily. It could have been the drinking.
I think the problem here is that the movie's about Alan, right? Like it's about him and his journey, but we don't realize that until the end of the movie. So we think that Judy and Peter are the joint protagonists of this movie, and Alan is kind of a guide through it. And then we realize that Judy and Peter are the supporting roles, and it's Alan's journey. And by that time, the fucking movie's over.
Yeah, I completely agree. And speaking of Alan's journey, so I have questions, right? So in this part of the movie, Robin Williams finally comes out of the jungle. And so we get to see a modern day Alan and what he's turned into now that he's a middle-aged man. And so he comes out, and I'm expecting him to be like wiry and sinewy and like looking like somebody who's lived off of the land. But instead, he's got this little, like, I don't even know if we call it a shirt, like a leaf blouse that's really, really shiny, like clearly fake leaves. He's got a matching little leaf hat. He's got a loincloth looking thing and no real pants. So he's probably being eaten up by all these mosquitoes. And he's got no real weapons that he's forged in any way. And more than that, he comes out and the guy's still got a dad bod. Like, I would think that he's got to be getting food from somewhere. He's got to have some sort of stores, some sort of Twinkies that he's brought with him somehow into the land of Jumanji, because this guy does not look like he's lived in the jungle for 26 fucking years.
Yeah, I once had a house guest who was crazy about the reality show Naked and Afraid. And so I sat down out of curiosity and watched an episode, which, by the way, had like 12 commercials for Baby Bell cheese, which I think is maybe their only sponsor. But anyway, what struck me was how much weight people lose and how fast, like when they don't have ready access to food. I mean, you see people, they're there for like a week and like weight loss, 18 pounds, you know? Alan would be malnourished for sure, probably missing like an eye, maybe some teeth, but that might scare the shit out of the children.
He'd have scurvy, y'all. Like the guy would have scurvy.
So I'm going to admit something embarrassing here. I'm a big fan of reality TV. And every year they have something in Celebration, Florida called the Hearts of Reality. It is a reality-based charity that helps children with heart issues. So every year they have an open bar night where they bring in the winners of The Bachelor, Survivor, Big Brother, Naked and Afraid, any reality show. So we've gone, I mean, Cole Pickok and I and Vanessa have gone multiple years. We have a good time. You sit at the bar, you have a couple drinks with these people. I actually sat down and drank a couple of beers with the guy who they called in on one of the episodes of Naked and Afraid when the other people tapped out really quick. And the dude was hardcore and all about it. And he loved survival. And you figure if Alan, he should be up for the challenge. The dude lived 26 years, survived, and as he had his little dagger, he should be coming out of this with a plan. Shouldn't we be playing the game in an open field? Or maybe even yet, this will sound bad, but a target-rich environment. Let's play in the mall. You don't have to be the fastest person to avoid a stampede. You just don't have to be the slowest. Wouldn't Alan have come up with some strategies?
I can't believe I'm defending the movie in this way, but I think the symbolism there is that this home is his safe place. And we get that when he appears, you know, out of the game. He returns home after 26 years in the jungle. And I think we got everything that Hook lacked. Like, there was a gratefulness in Robin Williams. You can see that he was this bratty kid who didn't stick up for Carl. This motherfucker didn't even close the gate when he got home as a child. His ass just walked in and left that gate wide open. And he turned into this man who's worshiping every room of his childhood home. I mean, I gave Steve a lot of shit for Hook because Hook lacked any emotional depth. I got seriously emotional watching Robin Williams react in this scene when he got home after being in the jungle.
And I agree. And I wonder if this is one of those movies that's hurt by technological limitations. In 95, they didn't do that good a job. And even though some other movies earlier had credible dinosaurs, this movie struggled to have insects, stampede of like elephants and zebras, lions. It mostly looked bad, but nothing is worse than those monkeys. The monkeys are prominent. They're everywhere. They're riding motorcycles. They're wearing helmets. They're brandishing firearms. They're driving cars. And it was just tough because they didn't look realistic. And I wish the movie had said, hey, this doesn't look real. This is artificial. Let's roll it back. But I kept being reminded that it was fake because it was pulling me out with these unrealistic monkeys.
Yeah, I mentioned in my opening notes that there's a huge issue here for CGI, like with my own kiddo. But I also kept asking myself, like, wow, like, did we settle for this type of CGI in the 90s? Like, did this, like, was this what passed muster? Because it must have been like a really lame time period to live, because we did have Jurassic Park. So you have like these shining moments, and then you come around and I mean, the spiders alone, right? And I know those weren't CGI. I know those were practical effects, but like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids had better CGI, better stop motion, better effects than this movie. Even the best parts of it, like even the lion, which is one of the better moments. I mean, it was just, it was awful looking.
You guys want to hear a stunning fact? This movie had a bigger budget than Jurassic Park.
Wow.
Who'd they hire? It wasn't ILM.
Robin Williams. That's who they hired. That's probably where the budget all went. But I can't believe you two are going to make me now defend CGI in a movie. I mean, you guys heard me on Titanic shitting all over it because the CGI was bad. I don't think these animals were supposed to look real. Otherwise, they would have used real animals. I think the idea was to make them match Chris Van Allsburg's illustrations in the book. If you look at the book, these monkeys look pretty fucking close to the book monkeys. And if you've ever seen that Polar Express movie with fucking Tom Hanks, that is some terrifying shit. Those illustrations brought to life, they are horrifying specters of broken dreams.
But those were supposed to be like animation, right? Like that's like early CGI animation. Like if you watch the original Toy Story now, like the original Toy Story looks really scary comparatively, but I don't think that it was supposed to be on purpose. I mean, reading up on it for this, like people were really impressed and really proud of the special effects for Jumanji, and I think they need to get higher standards because y'all, it did not. I mean, and I'm not going to add wipes to it because of the special effects, but God, it looked terrible.
No, and Gene, listen, later on the movie gets smart. The movie is self-aware. It lets us know we're in on the joke. They could have thrown in a little joke like Alan being like, oh my God, those monkeys don't even look real. It could have been something that they could have said that like, wow, those monkeys look weird or what's going on? Because they do it later on. So this was, they were proud of those monkeys.
Just everybody in the production staff walks off the set. Fuck you, Robin Williams.
You son of a bitch. Selfish.
Well, Judy and Peter convince Alan to help them finish the game, but they need Sarah to finish. The three find Sarah, now haunted by both Jumanji and Alan's disappearance, and they persuade her to join them. Sarah's first move releases fast-growing carnivorous vines, and Alan's next move releases a big game hunter named Van Pelt, whom Alan first met in the game's inner world. The next roll summons a stampede of various animals, and a pelican steals the game. Peter retrieves it, but Alan is arrested by Carl. So I said it during the introduction, this movie does not get enough credit for being quietly dark. Like several characters talk about the rumor that Mr. Parrish chopped his son into little pieces and hid him all over the house. Judy keeps making up stories about the horrifying ways her parents were killed. And you just know by his behavior that Sam Parrish, the dad, he was abusive, definitely verbally, probably physically, to his wife and child. And I appreciated that it was veiled enough for kids to watch and not really get, but present enough for adults to appreciate. I don't want to say it's like Beetlejuice level, but there was a darkness to this movie that I could really, wrap my arms around.
I don't know. I didn't get this about Sam Parrish. Like, I think Sam Parrish is like an old school dad that like softens at the end where he looks and was like, if you don't want to go, you don't have to go. Like, I don't think he's physically abusive. I think he's just an old money dude. Maybe neglectful, maybe verbally he's yelling, but y'all, I lost my fucking shit on my kids today driving back from this fucking safari. I turned around and looked at them and I told Ellie that if she didn't stop, I was going to let the camel we were going to feed eat her hair. So parents have rough moments, guys. I mean, it just happens. So I don't know. I don't buy that. I think you're giving this movie way too much credit.
Seriously, as the king of finding abusive parents in all of our movies, I'm going to tell you, Gene, you're way off. Sam Parrish, he's a pretty solid dude. He gives his son some advice. Hey, you have to stand up for yourself. That's some good thing. He says, I didn't know there were 5 kids. I wouldn't have told you that. And then in the alternate reality we get to the end, he's cool. He says, hey, tomorrow we'll talk about it. Father and son, man to man. He's a good dude.
Yeah, that's called convenient writing. He also tells his wife, get your jacket.
No, but you see, but at the end too, I think it would have been different once they, like, spoiler alert, fix everything. Robin Williams calls his dad and he's like, okay, Dad, we're so excited to see you tomorrow. Like, he's got a really healthy relationship with his dad. I think the problem is this poor dad, his kid is a brat and his kid is destroying his business. And like, I just think the kid's a little shit. And then he came back from the jungle in his little, loincloth and leaf ensemble, and all of a sudden wasn't a shit anymore, and so things were okay. Justice for Sam Parrish.
No, I agree. Alan's a bit of a piece of shit. He's a bit of an entitled kid, right? He runs, clearly there's a do not walk sign. He drives his bicycle across the intersection and the cop comes out and says, Alan, okay, you're good, holds up traffic. He goes around the construction site. What is he doing down there? He is a spoiled, entitled kid whose grandfather has a statue. I don't want to go to a private school. It's named after Grandpa.
It's so embarrassing that we have so much money and privilege. I'm going to go to Yale for free and build shoes when I grow up.
God. Poor fucking Alan. Wah, wah, wah. Sarah, her life is ruined. Her life, like Jumanji ruins it. She has 2,000 hours of therapy. She's got to overcome 26 years of trauma. Nobody believes her. Okay. Alan doesn't give 2 shits about her. Even after 26 years, he thinks about himself. She passes out. He picks up her unconscious body, carries it back to his house, and then he tricks her into continuing the game. She says, Alan, I can't do it. I've had therapy. I can't. This isn't real. Okay, just hold the dice. Oops, I tricked you. You rolled the dice. He doesn't give a shit about her. He's thinking about himself. He's a spoiled little shit.
Yeah, I have to say, I completely agree with Big D here, other than the fact that Sarah could have probably done something to make her life a little bit better, right? Like, I feel like maybe you shouldn't get a job as the town psychic if you don't want your life to be difficult. And I do feel also that Sarah gets a little dramatic here. Like, we all have trauma, right? And just to do the math, 2,000 hours of therapy is regular therapy for 19 years. I've had more than that because, I guess I'm more fucked up than Sarah. But, like, get over it, right? Like, okay, you saw some bats, you saw your friend get sucked into a game. Like, I feel like most of us have had more trauma by the 13 than that. Sarah also, I think, is a little privileged here. A little bit.
Yeah, she sucks as an adult. She sucked as a kid. I mean, as a kid, she's supposed to be like Alan's friend. She's dating the dude that kicks the shit out of him, but she brings his bike back and then he's like, do you want to play a game? And she's like, a game? I stopped playing games. And adult Sarah, you know what she reminds me? She reminds me of fucking elementary school bullies who decided in college that they wanted to start doing yoga and going to Burning Man. She's a fucking fraud. She's got multiple mandalas in her house, I'm sure. And she's completely out of line comparing her quote unquote struggles to Alan's. He was in a fucking jungle for 26 years and she thinks she's got problems.
And if she had the money to go to 2,000 hours worth of therapy, she probably comes for money as well, which is why she's able to dress so nice and has such a nice house when she's the town fucking psychic.
And fixed her nose.
Exactly. Because she looks a lot better.
Exactly.
But I will say that when I saw this movie for the first time, I thought that Robin Williams was ancient. So I was 13 years old and I was like, oh my God, like how horrible is that? He comes back all wrinkled and old and his whole life is gone. And then I did the math while watching this and I realized that he's 13 when he gets sucked in. And then he and Sarah grow up and it's 26 years later. And y'all, he's fucking 39 in this movie. And I turned 39 July 9th. I am Alan and Sarah's age now. And I felt really judged by this movie all of a sudden.
I mean, that's 26 years jungle time, though. Like, that'll age you quite a bit. But Ash, whatever you do, do not shave your beard. or cut your hair, because that shit aged him like 10 years in an instant. He actually looked like kind of like, I don't know, rugged or something when he popped out of the game. But after he does his makeover in the bathroom, he comes out, I go, God, he looks awful. He's got no fucking upper lip.
No.
He looks, as you said, ancient. His clothes are all ill-fitting. Like, keep the jungle look, dude. Go Brendan Fraser, embrace that shit.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, dude, it gets even worse. I'm at the point where I'm wishing I was 39. I'm starting to think, how old was Sam? How old was Sam Parrish? That's what I have to deal with.
He's probably 30 fucking 9, right? Based off of the way people look in this
probably
movie.
my age. Jesus.
Well, I do say, speaking of Sam, one thing, Gene, I will give you that I got on this watch is that I love the fact that the bad guy after him is his dad. He looks like his dad. He's played by the same actor. And there's something kind of like really deep about that, because it's this whole idea that for Alan, in his mind as a 13-year-old boy, it's like, my dad's trying to ruin my life by putting him in the school. And then in the game, he's literally trying to ruin his life by taking it. And I wished in this moment, when I had this realization, that the movie had done more with these types of ideas. I think that if it had been like this weird, like meta, like I'm hunting myself or my lineage or my genetic code, like it would have been a lot better than what it turned out to be.
Again, that's what I'm talking about with that subtle darkness. Van Pelt is the best character in this movie. His costume is brilliant. That cape, that hat, the mustache, his weapons, they're extravagant, and he has a sense of gameness. Like, he's a lot of fun to watch, but he is a terrible shot when trying to kill Alan. He's got a scoped like sniper rifle with a fucking like barrel magazine or something. So he's got tons of ammunition. He's chasing this guy who does not know how to take cover in any way, which leads me to a question. Can Jumanji actually kill anyone?
I think it could scare the shit out of somebody. I don't think it actually could kill anybody. We haven't witnessed that. But earlier on, Gene, you had mentioned that you thought the game could be sentient, that there was something about the game. There was an intelligence. It's obvious that the game was tormenting Alan, because Alan isn't surprised by the introduction of the hunter. He's obviously seen him in the jungle, and it was his father. And if the game gives you the clue, it says, a hunter from the darkest wild will make you feel like a child. Alan has been hunted by him for 26 years. And the fact that it's his father tells you the game might be some evil force that feeds off of children's terror, because it's been tormenting poor Alan for 26 years.
This whole thing is an homage to It.
No.
Yeah, but there's no orgy in this. We could have had that. It would have
made this movie a lot fucking better than it was, although it would be ugly kid orgy. You know, I don't know if I'm into that.
Throwing some CGI monkeys, a bat.
I mean, I'd be down to watch the monkeys more than the kid who played Alan.
Peter attempts to finish by cheating, but the game sends his token back to start and turns him into a monkey. There you go. Back in town, the stampede wreaks havoc and Van Pelt steals the game. Peter, Sarah, and Judy track Van Pelt to a department store where they set booby traps to subdue him and retrieve the game, while Alan, after revealing his identity to Carl, is set free. When the four return to the mansion, it is now completely overrun by jungle wildlife. They release one calamity after another until Van Pelt arrives. When Alan drops the dice, he wins the game, which causes everything that happened as a result of the game to be reversed.
So at this point in the movie, I'm shocked to try to find a true hero in this film. And I could not get over the fact of Carl's Caprice Cruiser. That is the hero of this film. That thing takes abuse. It never lets Carl down. It always starts. You think it's going to let him down. It gets shot up. It gets destroyed. The doors get ripped off. And finally, when those vines grab a hold of this beautiful car and it folds it in half and it pulls it into the woods, I felt so sad. I felt like it deserved a better fate. This is the true hero of this film, and it is the only character that has an arc that is worth redeeming, and I really can't help but feel really bad for this car.
It's a testament and a monument to American craftsmanship, to the industrial might of the Midwest. I mean, this car, Carl fixed the car, including the brakes, with items right off the shelf at Sir Save-A-Lot. It's that easy to fix. But I want to know, why is Carl the only cop in town? Like, clearly there's a dispatch because he calls in on the radio. So I would assume that other officers could be mobilized, but you just get Carl. And Carl is a terrible cop. His priorities are all fucked up. He has seen an active shooter on the streets with a high-power rifle, but he never calls it in. And then he goes to arrest Alan, who is an assault victim, and he's witnessed this. And he spends like 10 minutes talking to him when he knows that there's a fucking riot going on downtown. People are looting. There's animals running around, and he's just having a heart-to-heart.
Yeah, but maybe it's the economy of the town. It looks like they're having trouble. There's no business. There's open like fire barrels. There's a lot of homeless. Maybe he is the only cop in the entire town. But it steamrolls from there, Gene, because the movie kind of gets away from its origin. It is they're playing this game. There's wild jungle scenes. There's animals, and it turns into like I felt like it was Gremlins, where we get like the Save-A-Lot department store scenes, which felt forced and unnecessary. So eventually they do some MacGyver stuff. We're like, hey, we're getting chased by the hunter, and we're going to create a scuba gear canoe rocket. Oh, tire avalanche. And they're chasing the game. And that's my least favorite part of the movie. I would have rather watched them playing the game. Get some other kind of animals. Get some kind of other like jungle threats instead of Alan dealing with this father-son relationship issues with the stand-in Van Pelt.
Yeah, I think it's because the movie doesn't really know what it wants to be, because it includes a lot of random drama, because you got the whole dead parents, you got lost kids, which is great. But they also then try to do like slapstick humor. And you mentioned the tire avalanche. Like that shit would have knocked them out. I recently had a blowout this past weekend, and I forgot how heavy tires are. Like I opened the back of my car and the tire like fell forward, and like I went to go catch it with one hand and then immediately like fell halfway to the ground and had to use the other one. Like tires are no fucking joke. And so you got this slapstick and they're like, woo, like falling all over the place. And it's supposed to be fun and silly and ridiculous, but they don't lean into the humor in a way that does that when you've got this really dramatic, like emo side.
Yeah, there are a few times when the laughs work, but you're right, Ash, it's not during those slapstick moments. I didn't expect to laugh at all during this movie, but it got me a few times, usually by waiting for me to scream something at the screen and then having a character acknowledge it. Like you said, Big D, if Robin Williams had screamed out about how shitty the monkeys look, they do that a couple times. So first, when Alan's being sucked in the quicksand and every time he tries to grasp something, it comes apart. And I'm like, stop handing him shit that falls apart. And then Alan yells out, stop giving me things that come apart. That's funny. Later, in the funniest scene in the movie, I think Peter, he's like in half monkey form now, and he's trying to break into a shed to find an axe. And he notices that the shed is locked, so he grabs an axe from outside the shed, swings at the lock, and then realizes he's holding an axe. They don't do like they don't freeze it at all. It just, if you got the joke, you got it. If not, great, too bad for you. And I thought, it had some smarts along the way.
But did anybody else get the vibe that it felt like there was multiple writers? Because the second half, like those scenes, they made me realize that it wasn't there the whole time. So it was odd.
Yeah. And also the character's understanding of the game seems to change. Toward the end of the movie, the players stop taking breaks between the rolls. They're like, shit, roll fast. Like, we got to get this done, which would have been my fucking strategy from the start. If the three of us sat down and we knew that to make this end, we had to get to the end, and the only thing you have to do is roll dice, we'd roll those dice as fast as fucking possible.
Yeah.
Each roll is going to be a calamity. Wouldn't it make sense to go equip yourselves with some protective gear, maybe some weapons, and then just roll your asses off to end the game as quickly as possible?
Yeah, you get that one scene where like they roll and it's all dramatic and the hazy stuff comes up and they take the time to read it and they go, what was that? It's like, it's something coming to eat your face off. Just roll again until you get to the very end and yell fucking Jumanji.
Yeah, their pattern is roll, read the clue, stand around, and then, it's a stampede, it's a flood, it's spiders, it's a man-eating vagina plant. It's not like it's going to be something good. Not a single roll was like, oh, sweet, it's a 4-course meal. Is that good? Yeah. I don't know. 7, whatever.
So when Alan is first sucked into the game, you can hear him screaming, roll the dice, roll the dice. Now, in 1996, he's chosen to play this game like it's family night. It's a nice leisurely, like, oh, let's all roll. Oh, wow. Oh, there's monkeys, there's bugs, there's a stampede. I would speed roll. If they had just done roll, 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 the game would have been over.
And there would be no movie.
But that might have been the better thing.
Well, Alan and Sarah return to 1969 just in time for Alan to reconcile with Sam. After realizing that they have memories of the game, Alan and Sarah throw Jumanji into a river, then share a kiss. In an alternate version of the present, Alan and Sarah are married and expecting their first child. Alan's parents are still alive, and Alan is now successfully running the family business. Alan and Sarah meet Judy, Peter, and their parents, Jim and Martha, for the first time during a Christmas party. Alan offers Jim a job and convinces him to cancel his upcoming ski trip, averting his death and Martha's. Meanwhile, two young girls hear drum beats while walking on a beach, and Jumanji is seen lying partially buried in the sand.
So Alan decides to stay consistent with his strategy. At the end, he's won the game, and he just leisurely says, Jumanji? As the bullet almost hits him in the face, okay? But what I was surprised is that this not only made everyone else get sucked into the vortex, but it undid the past. It undid everything. It managed to create some kind of alternate history. So by winning the game, the entire 26 years of the past has changed. So now Alan never disappeared. He somehow married Sarah. He hired Jim, to get close. He wanted to groom Judy and Peter and stop that Canadian ski trip. But I hated the fact that winning the game, it turned this into a time travel movie. I didn't get it. Why? Why did this fix the past? If you win the game, it should have been over. You should have had Alan there now, stuck in 96. He's in the house, and we could have gone from there.
I don't know. I mean, that's just what the new movies actually do. I mean, if you've watched them, Colin Hanks, the only reason he has a role is to come out at the end with the baby carrier because he went back to the 80s and he ends up a kid and he doesn't end up being like some school shooter, which is what they're portraying him to be at the beginning. He winds up being like a stand-up citizen, just still in a rock t-shirt. And I liked it. I liked that we went back to the beginning because it wouldn't have been fair to keep it that way. The only reason the world existed the way that it did is because they didn't play the game because Sarah fucking sucks.
Meanwhile, in Gene's gloom-o-vision, I'm watching this ending. I'm like, God, this is so sad. It's so tragic. Yeah, they saved the lives of the two parents and they prevented Judy and Peter from being orphans, but they killed the people that Judy and Peter were. They killed their friends. Mm-hmm. By being in this alternate reality, that relationship never happened. That friendship was never forged. You never spent that time together. And it started me in this spiral of reflecting of how the relationships we build with people are more important than life or death. And I was just fucking sitting there staring at the night sky going, fuck you, Jumanji. What the hell have you done?
So now keep in mind, Alan, yes, he was trapped in the jungle for 26 years. But Sarah, she lived in the real world for 26 years. Are you telling me that Sarah, in this 26 years since they got trapped, she didn't buy some Microsoft when they had the IPO in 86? If Sarah had invested $1,000, that would be $3.7 million based on current share.
But the movie points out that as soon as they come back, they start to lose their memory.
Well, but they
don't
remember
seem to
Judy
lose
and
the memory
Peter
to get these stupid kids.
Well, you remember your friends.
Oh,
the real investment is the friends you make along the way.
Don't justify this.
I don't know. I think the real tragedy here is they had to go through puberty twice. I mean, that fucking sucks. But maybe I'm just dark and this is a dark time. But if anyone treated my kids with the insanity that Robin Williams does to these kids in this Christmas party scene, I'd be quitting that job and keeping my kids away from them. I wouldn't let them anywhere near them because I'd figure they were some creeper, some stranger danger, up to no good. Because he's like, our house, like our house is your house. Like why don't you just come to our house?
So growing up as an Iranian kid, we have this thing called Disco Chattanooga, which translates to Disco Chattanooga. And all the Iranians would go and disco down and the kids would just run around the hotel ballroom. And I didn't know if somebody was my uncle or not an uncle. It was just all a mix of beer breath and mustaches and cigarette hands. People were just touching you and fuck. I mean, this doesn't seem that weird to me. Did I just have a particularly odd relationship with adults growing up?
No, but the kids don't know who they are.
I didn't know who any of these people were either.
The answer is yes. Yes, because this is not fucking normal.
No, it's not normal at all. What do you think's going to happen? They don't remember you. So you're going to just have this fantasy and be like, hey, hi, how are you guys doing? Oh, do you remember that?
Here's some presents we bought for you that are exactly what we know that you like because we're stalking you and maybe you want to like wear your skin.
Do you guys remember the spiders? Oh, do you remember the spiders? No, they don't remember it. They don't. And it's really, really bizarre. This is like a Michael Jackson Neverland Ranch thing. Hey, Macaulay, come up. Let's go on the rides. It's really weird. Give them a college scholarship. Hire the dad. Move on.
Exactly. Make sure they don't die and then leave them be.
Yes. You stopped the trip. That's all that mattered. Stop the ski trip.
Hey, Peter, I brought your axe.
Yes.
Now is the time we give our wipe score for Jumanji. Our wipe score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie takes to get out of perspective. But Zero Wipes is a perfect movie. It is getting rich off a shoe factory in picturesque New Hampshire. And 5 Wipes is an absolute disaster movie. It is young Sarah Whittle's face. Big D, we'll start with you. What is your wipe score for Jumanji?
Man, I know this is sacrilegious to think, but I enjoyed the 2 modern versions much more. Tons of wasted screen time. In the end, I don't care. I don't care about Alan's backstory and the parishes and how their family suffered. It was just a waste. I want jungle adventure. I want snakes. I want spiders. I want hunters, rhinos. I want all kinds of like the things the game could have borne. Instead, it was a delve into the father-son relationship of a very wealthy family. Not what I wanted, not what I expected. So sadly disappointed. So for me, it's a 2.5 wipe. I can't do any worse. It's an average film. It wasn't terrible. I mean, you had Robin Williams. That's worth a wipe right there. So 2.5 is what I think.
Yeah, I mean, this is a whatever movie. Like, we've improved not only in special effects, but also on plot lines and family movies, just like in general. Because here's the thing. And again, that's why I said at the beginning, it's hard to not think about the remake. If the remake hadn't have come out, maybe I would have looked at this movie kinder. But the remake of Jumanji is a 1 wipe movie. The sequel to the remake is a 2 wipe movie. The recent Jungle Cruise is a 2 wipe movie. This is a 3.5 wipe movie. It's bloated. It's mixed in terms of what it's trying to be. Robin Williams, I think, does his best to save it, as he always does, but it's below average. And this movie, if it had come out today like it is, would have been totally forgotten. It's 3.5 wipes.
You're talking about Jungle Cruise where like the guy dooms the entire earth to like save the one chick.
He doesn't doom the whole earth.
He potentially could have if things that have gone sideways.
It's a better movie than this.
Or when like the really awful dudes are just doomed to immortality.
Yeah, but they're bomb ass looking dudes.
But it's entertaining. It wasn't
funny
the backstory.
And self-aware.
Yes.
I want to take y'all back to a time when brothers Adam R. and Josh R. had their Shat on Literature Challenge. Remember that little thing?
I do.
And we were asked to compare 2 movies based on books to see which was the better film adaptation. And bravely, they took Interview with the Vampire and stacked it up against Of Mice and Men. And I think Of Mice and Men set the standard for what bad was. Like, this isn't that bad. It had an unexpected darkness, an unexpected humor, and I think it did a decent job of bringing a book to life in 1995. Robin Williams, Jonathan Hyde, Kirsten Dunst, Bradley Pierce, I don't think a single one of them had a bad performance. They're all enjoyable on screen, even if the calamities they faced made no sense. I'm with you, Big D. This is an average movie, no worse than 2.5 wipes. So with our wipe scores combined, that's 2.5 from me, 2.5 from Big D, 3.5 from Ash. That gives us an average wipe score of 2.83 repeating for Jumanji.
So, Gina, I think that the wipe score of 2.83, it seems so punitive, so hard, because Jumanji is a loved classic. People think so highly of it. Everyone seems, I remember Jumanji, but I think it is warranted. And now we're going to see what movies this puts into class. With a score of 2.83, that now ties us with the first movie Shat The Movies ever reviewed, Big, License to Drive, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, Nightmare Before Christmas, Air Force One, Escape to Victory, Maximum Overdrive, and Transformer the Movie.
Yet none of those is a terrible movie. They're just not good movies.
Yeah. I'm fine with
That's
it
what this
being
is.
there.
Yeah, Robin deserves better. I'm leaning towards Fisher King, but that could change next week.
Or maybe we're learning that his movies weren't that good.
Dead Poet Society.
Well, or like Good
Popeye.
Morning Vietnam. Oh, Popeye.
Dead
There's
Poet
tons we
Society.
But also Popeye.
Dead Poets.
All right, Steve, I hope you think we did Jumanji justice. Ash, why don't you take us to this week's emails?
So we've got an email here from Becky, and it is an actually. Becky says, "Hi, Chat Crew. I'm Becky from San Diego, and I've written in once before a few years ago, but my email didn't make the pod. My actually is for Big D, but I want to give a little background first. I found your podcast a few years ago when I was looking for an 80s, 90s podcast and found you guys. I can't remember how long ago it was, but I had to spend at least a year catching up to current weekly shows. I definitely didn't catch up until after Ash started being a regular host. One of my favorite things about the pod was that Big D was around my age. So that's when he started talking about his movies and its time of reminiscence. It was also my timeline. I was pretty sure Big D was my same age, give or take or so, a year of high school. I graduated at 17 in 91, and I feel like Big D graduated in 92 or so. The belief was reinforced in your recent cover of Last of the Mohicans, released 1992, where Big D very vividly remembers seeing the film in college with the girlfriend that took his virginity. However, just 2 episodes earlier, in the moment of my actually, Big D states that he saw Friday, released 1995 in high school, with a group of his friends, clearly remembering that he had not smoked pot yet, and many of the jokes in the movie went over his head. Actually, Big D, how old are you? Or are you having a Jacob's Ladder moment? Thanks, crew. Love what you do. Please don't start considering movies from the 2000s until you debate the merit of covering the bridges of Madison County. Becky in San Diego.
So, Becky, you, when this popped up, like I found myself questioning reality. I was thinking, at this point, we've done so many movies. It is a blur, but my life is not that big of a blur. I'm 40, I'll be 49 this August. Okay. So yes, you're correct. I must have misspoke. I don't remember saying my high school friends because in 95, I was in college. Gene, you edited that one. Was I did I say I was in high school?
I don't quite recall, but I remember while listening to that, I had some like timeline fluctuations in my head too. And I thought that it was worded in such a way that maybe I didn't quite understand what was going on. But yeah, I don't think you've ever been dishonest with us about your age. You've always been the elder statesman of the podcast. And you've been very clear about it.
I've just noticed that lately it's becoming more of a challenge. So maybe we're entering the final phase of Shat.
I think one of the things that really throws us off too is that the time that the movie came out isn't always the time that we saw it. And that's one of the ones that's really like throws me off. Like next week's movie, which I won't spoil it, but next week's movie, I could have sworn was an early 80s movie because I thought it was very old the first time I saw it in the 90s. But in fact, that's not the case. And I think with, as we talked about with Jumanji and Jurassic Park, if you would have asked me before we did this recording, I could have sworn that Jurassic Park came out after Jumanji. I think it's just what feels more modern to you, right? But yeah, with Friday, I mean, it's easy mistake. Shit, dude. If you did a quiz with me and asked me, did it happen in high school or did it happen in college? I'd probably get an F or a D at best on that.
Yeah. So I will try to do my best to keep my history. But if anything, you should know that all of us are honest. But after a while, your brain starts to turn to mush. You start to lose that sharpness. And so thank you very much for writing in. And again, Steve, thank you very much for the commission. And next week, again, Steve has blessed us with another commission. And Stanley Kubrick's take on the Vietnam War follows smart aleck Private Davis, quickly christened Joker by his foul-mouthed drill sergeant, and pudgy Private Lawrence, nicknamed Gomer Pyle, as they endure the rigors of basic training. Though Pyle takes a frightening detour, Joker graduates to the Marine Corps and is sent to Vietnam as a journalist, covering and eventually participating in the bloody Battle of Hue. This was again commissioned by Steve W., released in 1987. Stanley Kubrick. This is a classic, and I think this is one of those serious movies that will be a nice change from what we've been doing lately.
Get your crayons ready. Thank you, Steve, for commissioning this movie and the next. And thank you to all the commissioners who make this podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat The Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat The Movies. You can email us, host@shatthemovies.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. You can find all that information on our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all that information on our website, shatpod.com/TV, wherever fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by iTunes, please leave a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Ash and Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us next week for the following movie.
Help, 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 help. Help, 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 help. Help, 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 help.
Paris Island, South Carolina, the United States Marine Corps Recruit Depot. An 8-week college for the phony tough and the crazy brave.
That is not your daddy's shotgun, cowboy. Private Joker is silly and he's ignorant, but he's got guts, and guts is enough. Most of you will go to Vietnam. Some of you will not come back. Cowboy.
Sir, yes, sir.
0300, infantry. Joker.
Sir, yes, sir.
4212, basic military journalism. You think you're Mickey Spillane?
Sir, I wrote for my high school newspaper, sir.
I hate the name, Joker. I want to go out to the field.
You wasted your first day in the field, and it'd be my fault.
Joker, you will take off that button. How's it gonna look if you get killed wearing a peace symbol?
What is that you've got written on your helmet?
Born to kill, sir.
You write born to kill on your helmet and you wear a peace button. Don't you love your country?
Yes, sir.
Why don't you jump on the team and come on in for the big win?
I'm squad leader.
Follow anywhere, scumbag.
I need help. I'm trying to help you, Leonard.
We're not leaving Doc J and 8-Ball out there.
Are those live rounds?
7.62 millimeter. Full metal jacket.